Okay, so I read like 31 releases in 2021, and I figured I would do a very quick wrap up today where I show the book, say who I would maybe recommend this for, and move on. Because I have reviews, wrap ups, I have Goodreads reviews for all of these books. So if you want more in depth thoughts, they are on the channel, they are on my Goodreads. And if I talk about these as long as I usually talk about books, this will be an hour long. And we are trying to make not an hour long video. So I do have it broken up into genres. You can see timestamps down below. And let's go. We're going to start with fantasy, starting with standalones, beginnings of series, and moving into sequels. The first one I have written down, this is not in publication order, this is just, I wrote them down from my story graph, is The Conductors. This is really fun if you like mysteries. Like if you like detective mystery stories and you want something in Reconstruction era that has really cool, like, magic, I think it's fun. I do think your mileage is going to be based off if you like these characters, but for me, I really like the duo. I think it has a really fun romance and setting. I had fun with it. Next up, The Gilded Ones. I love this. This is one of my favorite young adults of the year. This is a really intriguing first book. It is a very dark young adult, but that also captures the naivete and young love of a 14-year-old. I had fun with it. I am excited for the sequel. The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, one of my favorite fantasies of the year. This is a low magic military fantasy with two really compelling characters who are just trying to figure themselves out. They are both messy. I recommend this book if you like mess. I thought the writing was also really unique and compelling. I am excited for the second book. I cannot wait to reread this one. If you want great LGBTQ representation, if you want North African inspired fantasy, you should give this a try, see if it's your taste. I loved it. The Jasmine Throne was also a favorite fantasy read of the year. This is an Indian-inspired fantasy that is so epic in its scope. There is rebellion, there is forbidden love, there is forbidden magic and magical curses on the land. I am really excited to see how this unfurls. If you like your kind of slow to medium-paced political epic fantasies, I would give this a try. It has moments where you are going to cheer. It has characters you will love to hate and love to love. And again, lots of mess. It was fantastic. She Who Became the Sun is probably my least favorite of the Sapphic trifecta, which is an unpopular opinion, but this is a really compelling first book in a duology that's a retelling of a historical moment in China of the rise of the Ming Dynasty, I believe. I could be wrong. But regardless, our main character is a very morally gray, unlikable character at times who is trying to survive and also obtain power. There is a lot of great discussion on gender in this work. It is definitely one of those military pieces where you don't see a lot of the battles, but the military strategy is very important. And lots of decisions are made that are going to make you go, but why? If you do not like stories about legends being born, you might not like this because it really leans into that type of storytelling, in my opinion. And also, the first part reads tonally very different from the parts that follow. It kind of goes from a school setting into a larger cast of characters, military strategic setting very quickly. And if that sounds familiar, yes, that has happened in another popular Asian-inspired fantasy series, but honestly, they're not the same whatsoever. Another one that I didn't love as everyone else, but I can totally see its audience, is A Master of Jinn by P. Djeli Clark. This is great for people who want alternative history Cairo and want a wonderful, very, suave detective, and you're trying to figure out this mystery. The strengths for me were the characters and their interactions and this cool setting, but I personally just don't like detective stories. This is not an untraditional detective story. This is a detective murder mystery, and if those aren't your type of things you like when you read, I don't think this is going to convince you suddenly like it unless you tend to love the characters enough. I really like the characters, but I don't think I love them as much as everyone else. The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. Ooh, this is a book that I feel like I've been waiting more for my whole life, and I think what's really odd is I can say that this is the adult version of Encanto, a movie that came out recently. Both of those books are about a magical house that was built by the magic of a grandmother who was working really hard and in questionable ways to protect the family and their magic. It's really odd, the overlaps in their plot. But one's Ecuadorian and one is Colombian, so there are differences. And I think this story is wonderful, but if you do not like contemporary magical realism fantasy, I don't think this one will change your mind. I know a lot of people who didn't connect with it because it didn't have themes that resonated with them, and then the other parts weren't strong enough for them, like the plot wasn't compelling enough or things like that. Personally, I was gripped the entire time. I love Zoraida Cordova's writing, and some parts of the plots I didn't love, but the parts I remember are the family elements and the themes of family and generational trauma and what it's like to be in a diaspora. I loved it. It's a book I can't wait to read again, so I'm just saying, if Encanto spoke to you, this probably will too, but it's a more adult form. Folklorn is another book that's very much magical realism, contemporary fantasy that speaks about generational trauma, but from a Korean experience. So the main character is a Korean American. She is a scientist who is pretty estranged from her family, but because of trauma that has recently happened and a loss in the family, she's brought back home, and also dealing with her grief by exploring these myths and her potential mystical connection to this other woman. If you like literary fiction, I would give this a try. Like, this is a book that I put more in my literary fiction brain than I do my fantasy, but it's typically shelved in fantasy. It does have some ghost-like qualities, but it definitely more leans into that more what is real, what is not real parts of magical realism that you can get in fantasy at times. I loved learning about the Korean myths. I thought the main character's journey was really compelling, and I just love generational stories and things like that. So family themes are big for me, so if they're also big for you, I would try this out. We'll talk about two next. That's The Mask of Mirrors and The Liar's Knot. What else can I say? Ballroom politics, con artists, found family, a masked Avengers. Like, secret identities are so fun in this book. Great character banter. If these are things you like in your fantasy, you should pick it up. This author duo has been doing a fantastic job of giving really entertaining, like, intriguing, intricate plots to this world that I find so compelling and I love unpacking. Nothing ever feels like it comes out of nowhere. Nothing feels like a plot convenience. And the character interactions, there are moments that make me swoon and so happy. Like, there's great platonic chemistry, there's great romantic chemistry, there's great just, like, tension on all levels, and the intention and care that went into this world it comes off the page. I highly recommend it if any of those are your fantasy buzzwords. A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. If you like Sarah J. Maas, you will probably like this book. If you don't like Sarah J. Maas, you will not like this book. That is my recommendation. And if you don't know what a Sarah J. Maas book is, you do not start here. I mean, you can, but it's the fourth book in a series. It is basically her fantasy romance line. It's don't go to it for the plot. Don't go for it for the world building. All of those are riddled with plot holes and MacGuffins, and that's not why you're there. If you like angsty fae relationships, this is your author. Illusionary, another Zoraida Cordova, perfect duology ender. It was the perfect length, pacing. It had the trope that I wanted it to have. Like, if you like enemies to lovers, you should read this. If you like fake dating, you should read this. Like, it's really good. I had a lot of fun. I could see myself picking up this duology to read as like a comfort read. It was a great vacation read for me because it was one of those like just 300-page books that I couldn't put down, that I was really compelled by. But again, Zoraida Cordova is a favorite author of mine, so this is no surprise. We Free the Stars is another duology ender. This was for a different young adult series that I really liked. I think it's a tiny bit on the long side, but it also has that will they, won't they, angsty YA romance trope that I really like. Like, I loved those moments, which is what I was there for, and I did really like the found family aspects and how they were going to resolve the situation that they kicked off at the end of the first book. I thought was really satisfying. So I had fun with this one. I think it's a little long for me to put on my comfort reread list just because each book's like 500 pages, but I don't regret reading it. And if you like desert fantasy and are okay with common, comfortable tropes, I would try this out because I do think it does some things differently, but it's also very comfortable. I don't know. I had a great time with it, but I do know a lot of my friends who read more young adult than me didn't like it as much because I think it didn't scratch new itches. But if you're like me and don't read a lot of young adult, I think it could be a fantastic time, and it's a contained duology. And the last fantasy on the list, Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. One of the best series enders of all time. I don't think it would suddenly make you like the Greenbone Saga if you didn't like Jade City. Like, if you have issues with urban fantasy that is very patriarchal and you didn't like any of the characters, you're not... Jade Legacy won't change your mind. But I will say, if you were lukewarm on Jade War, Jade Legacy might change your mind. Like, that's what happened to me. It's really just an amazing arc of this generation of Greenbone warriors in Janloon, and I can't wait to reread it one day. I thought it was masterfully done. I thought it was so cathartic. I thought it had real consequences and stakes. I thought everything was very well laid out because she chose to tell a story over 25 years, and you have to be very intentional about what windows you open into that timeline, and I just thought it was done masterfully. Moving on, we now have science fiction. Again, I'll talk about the beginnings and standalones, then move into the sequels. Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This is my favorite work by them. I really liked the writing of this novella, which is very much a folk tale. It's a sci-fi, but it's a folk tale in Ghana about this woman who suddenly has these powers of death, and I loved the folklore writing style of it. It is not hard sci-fi. I would not pick it up if you wanted a hard sci-fi novella. It is definitely going to have that genre blending of this could have been a fantasy story, but we're in a near future sci-fi world, but it's my favorite writing by Nnedi Okorafor yet. I loved it a lot more than Binti or Lagoon, and I cannot wait to read Noor because of Remote Control. Winter's Orbit. This is a book I do have a standalone review for, but if you are looking for a book that is 50% romance and 50% like mystery political plot, this is your book. I don't think it's very strong on its sci-fi elements, but they are there if you like the aesthetic of a sci-fi galaxy. We have two characters, though, who are the glue of this story. One is a bisexual disaster, self-proclaimed, and the other one is just a cinnamon roll who has a history that you get to unpack in this story. And I love their chemistry. So for me, the romance part is the strongest part of this story, and it's a marriage of convenience book. So if any of those are your buzzwords, check it out, but just know that the other 50% very much is like a mystery political plot. And if that is not your thing, it is half the book. It is very 50-50. Machine Hood is a book that I thought was really great. If you want a standalone kind of like medium-paced thriller, I would say, like, it's not a traditional page-turning thriller, but we have a character who's about to leave their job, and there's a gig economy now, like that's how everyone gets their jobs, but on her last thing as like kind of a security guard, something happens that she needs to solve and unpack, and you kind of have her and her sister figuring out. And I just thought the world was really cool. I really liked the world. I thought the characters were well developed enough, and it was like one of those action-packed sci-fi that I enjoy. So remember, I don't care if things are slower in action-packed sci-fi. So keep that in mind when I say that. But I was really surprised by this one, and it was one of the more underrated releases of the year. Another underrated release is We Are Satellites. This is such a wonderful, soft social sci-fi. If you are looking to dip your toes into sci-fi and you typically read contemporary, I would try this one out because it is extremely near future, like feels like today. And it's about this new technology that allows people to suddenly multitask. And what does that do? And you follow it through the lens of this family dynamic. I don't think it was particularly deep, but I really liked it. I thought it was a good page turner for me. I loved the family and their dynamics. Not as big on the ending, but I don't think the ending is bad. So if you like soft social sci-fi, if you like families and discovering the messiness of a family when you have political debates like are brought up by this device, I would pick it up. The last standalone that I have is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey, easily one of my favorite sci-fis of the year. This book seems to be, it will either bore you to tears or you can't put it down. And where you will fall, I have no clue. I could not put it down. This is definitely one of those thrillers that doesn't have a twist, that probably isn't traditionally paced, but it has one of those characters that unsettle you and you're like, what are you doing? What will you do next? I like you, but I don't know if I'm rooting for you. I don't know what you're doing. Like, that's how I felt the entire time, and I really liked the writing. This is my favorite Sarah Gailey. I think people who found it boring don't have that same intrigue that I did with the main character, or just straight up did not like the main character enough to care, which is fair. She is kind of one of those more prickly protagonists. On to the sequels, we have A Desolation Called Peace. Again, one of the favorite sci-fi reads for me of the year. This is the sequel to A Memory Called Empire. I have reviews for both of those. I would say that this one is a better plotted book than A Memory Called Empire, but in some ways, I love A Memory Called Empire more. It's very bizarre. But if you like First Contact, if you like military sci-fi, if you want to continue to explore the themes that are brought up in the first book, I would pick this up. I think it's very satisfying what it does. I think we really get to explore that theme of what makes a person civilized. Like, that's a huge part of the first book. So if you like the first book, I think more often than not, you will continue to like the second book. Maybe more, maybe less, but I think it's a smaller population that would dislike the sequel if you liked the first book. And if you struggled with the first book, I think you might have a better chance with the second because it is, in my opinion, better paced and it has more plot elements. Next up's Chaos on Catnip, the sequel to Catfishing on Catnip, my favorite YA series. It's a YA sci-fi thriller series with an adorable AI and the best found family friend group on the internet I have ever seen. I just have so much fun with it. If you want wholesome vibes, if you want a wholesome thriller page-turner, which I know is very niche, you should read this series, probably starting with the first book, Catfishing on Catnip, which I have reviews everywhere because I just scream about this series all the time. And the last one I'll talk about in sci-fi is Symbiosis by Nikki Drayden, the sequel to Escaping Exodus. I believe this is a duology. I love the characters and her world building. Like, Nikki Drayden for me is just an author who can make compelling, interesting worlds and put really messy characters in it, and I just love seeing what trouble they get into. And that's no different here. Per usual, her endings aren't amazing for me, but if you liked Escaping Exodus, I think you're for sure gonna like Symbiosis. And for this series, if you want to see humans survive on Space Beast and what it means to try to go from parasitism to symbiosis, like exploring that, can we coexist with our, habitat in a way that isn't destructive? That's a big theme. And also there's just big themes of like culture and change when a cultural system is just not working anymore. I had a lot of fun. I love Nikki Drayden. Okay, I have 5 indie books I want to talk to you about. I think almost all of them are fantasy, but there's one sci-fi. We have Nine of Swords. I would read this if you do not mind repetitive writing styles, but love royalty fantasy. Like, if you like royalty fantasy with school year vibes, like, it also does a lot of cool subversion for, like, the kind of Hunger Games battle royale-ness that we get in that genre a lot. Like, there is, like, a battle royale situation. We're in a military school setting with like royalty children and big prophecy vibes. My only complaint is that if it was traditionally published, I think it could have been edited down in length and been a little less repetitive in certain sentence moments. But if you as a reader don't care about that, this would be probably a really fun, cozy read for you. Next one I'll talk about is Sword in the Street, which is really more a the fantasy is the aesthetic, but the main core of it is following this like relationship drama unfurl. You have this couple who live in poor settings. One is trying to struggle with survival but also not succumbing to greed, and the other one is neurodivergent and trying to figure out how to exist with their partner who's doing questionable things but also exist in this world where he is neurodivergent, and there's some stuff to maneuver there, like how to come across and communicate in ways that work for both him but also get his point across. I really liked that representation. I never see it in fantasy, and this is definitely those type of fantasy worlds where things are settled with duels, so if you like sword fights, I would check it out. Another story with neurodivergent representation that I read this year in indie space was Once Stolen, which our main character is a merperson, and our secondary main character is non-binary, so if you want that representation, it's also there. Our setting is also like a swampy rainforest, so I never read that either. And so if you are looking for any of that, I would pick it up because I thought it was a really fun standalone with potential for sequels that I know the author has been working on and has coming out in the next year or two. But our main character steals something that they shouldn't, and it kind of devolves into what I call an Emperor's New Groove situation, where you have these two characters who have to work together, and one is super optimistic and hopeful, and the other one's kind of a butt, and it kind of has to grow. And I thought it was really fun, and I had a great time in the setting and with these characters. The last fantasy indie I read was The Boy with Fire, which I loved. This is an Indian-inspired sci-fantasy. It has sci-fi elements, it has fantasy elements, it's the first in a series, and it is an ending. There's a lot of prophecy, there's royalty fantasy, there is morally gray decisions that have to be made, there is redemption arcs that are attempted. I had a lot of fun. I cannot wait to reread it in anticipation of the sequel. The last one I'll talk about is First Light, which is a sci-fi book, and these are just... I have the second book on my Kindle ready to read. This is just a really fun adventure sci-fi with kind of, your just classic big universe. You have these 3 species and they all coexist but have issues with each other. One's like a cat person, one's more alien, one's human, and we have this issue happening in the galaxy that for different reasons, our main characters are trying to parse and figure out. There are mysteries afoot, there are hidden pasts. It just has a lot of fun to it. Like, it's just a fun adventure that is also, I think, medium-paced enough for me that I get good character development and good, character dynamics development. Next up, we have horror, because apparently I actually read 3 horror books, or what I'm defining as horror. We have Saarland by Rivers Solomon. If you don't mind body horror, like if that doesn't freak you out, you should read this, and it's really interesting commentary on a whole host of things that I talk about in my review. You follow a new mother, there are cult aspects, there is what is happening to me aspects. Like that was the page turning thing for me. I'm like, what is happening to Vern? And I won't get into it, but very early on you're like, what is happening to Vern? is a big part of it. There is found family that made my heart soft. I have a whole review, but Rivers Solomon, I think, really stepped up, and like this is their best book, in my opinion, of the ones that I have read so far. Next up, we have Summer Suns, and I'm not a big gothic person, but I really liked this gothic dark mystery book. It's definitely more dark academia gothic than it is horror, but it's very much marketed as horror. Like look at the cover. There are definitely ghosts, and there's definitely unsettling, creepy moments, and everyone has their own definition of what makes them scared. But for me, this definitely leaned into more what I call dark academia and gothic. If you want to explore toxic masculinity in the queer community, that is in here in spades. If you want to look into someone going through grief, I think a lot of the complaints I saw were that people didn't like how slow-paced it was at the beginning, and because our main character is going through grief, they are a little insufferable for a long time because of their process. I thought it was really realistic. I actually didn't mind going through that process with them. I thought it was a really good journey, but I think your mileage is going to vary a lot. This is a character study. The plot itself is not why you enjoy this book for the most part. Like, it's not a bad plot. It doesn't detract. But, like, it's the characters, it's the themes, it's the atmosphere that really make this story work. And the last one in this section I don't actually have a lot to say about, but Flowers for the Sea was a novella that came out this year. It's very Eldritch horror sort of thing. Another book about motherhood, but I liked Saarland's take on motherhood a little bit better. And it's creepy with weird imagery, and yeah, I think I would have rather this have been a novel, but it's a book that I read that left my mind, so I don't know if it's a book that I really recommend to anyone unless anything I said sounded interesting to you. And the last book we'll talk about didn't fit into any of the categories because it was just a random new release I read because I wanted to, and that was Amor Actually. It's a holiday romance collection. Obviously only read it if you want to read romance stories. They definitely don't have fade to black scenes, and it's based off the stories in the movie Love Actually. So if you don't like the movie Love Actually, you might still like these stories. They're not the same. It's not like the 2003 Love Actually in 2021. No. It's actually from a Latinx eye. It's in New York City. It's not in London. But, it definitely takes those romantic arcs that are in that movie. And I had a really fun time with it. But I think it's for a very niche subset of people. So somehow I think I made this video a reasonable length. Again, I have in-depth thoughts all over the channel. If you have trouble finding it, let me know. I can point you there. I have a Discord. We can talk about it more there. Let me know what was your favorite release of 2021 that I haven't gotten to, so I can start making that overly ambitious books that I should read from 2021 list. If you want to leave an emoji, oh gosh, I don't know. Leave a fantasy or sci-fi emoji. Leave something that, makes you think of those genres. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.